So there are a couple of things in order to really enliven or bring life to your prayer. There's a couple of things that have to be done. He mentions three major things, and today we're going to just talk about two of those things, and we'll leave the third for the next session. The first of those is, he says, the heart being present, as mentioned. What that means is that the heart has been emptied of everything else. It's been emptied of everything else. And essentially this is the resolution of the heart. And if your heart is resolute, if it is fixed on something, then it will be present in that thing without a doubt. Whatever your heart is fixated upon, it will be there, present and attentive without a doubt. So there is no, he says, there's no cure to bringing the heart into the prayer or making it present, except by directing your resolution to the prayer. You say, I'm going to pray now. I'm not going to do anything else in these 10 minutes. I'm standing here for prayer. I can't be on the computer. I can't be on the phone. I can't be talking to my spouse. I can't be teaching or disciplining my children. I can't be working while I'm busy in prayer. And therefore, I will focus on prayer. That you will direct your attention and your resolve to the prayer itself, to its actions, to its words, to its discourse, to its remembrances. You will fix your heart on the prayer. Basically, and the reality of this resolution is that it is strong at times and it is weak at times. And this is based on the strength of a person's faith and their belief in the hereafter and their belittlement of this world. Right? So there's three things there, or two things there we should say. The al-imanu bil-akhirah, belief in the next life, wa-ihtiqar ad-dunya, right? To belittle this world. So basically you've given more of yourself to the next life than you have of this world. And if you are able to manage that, then you'll be fine in the prayer, because the prayer is something that's for the next life. It's not for this life. Prayer is something that's very special. It's not such a worldly pursuit like business or trade. He says, when you see that your heart is not present in prayer, know that your iman is weak. If your heart is not present, then you know that you have weak iman, and you have to struggle to strengthen your faith. The second thing, number two, and that is to seek understanding of Allah's speech, because this is what's behind your heart being present. He says it's possible that the heart can be present with al-lafz dun al-ma'na, just the utterances without understanding the meaning. It's possible. A person's heart can be present while they don't understand. However, it is important that you direct your thoughts to understanding the meanings, and that you repel any other thoughts which will distract you, and you rid yourself of those external distractions. Right? You want to focus, because if you don't understand what's being recited, or if you don't understand what you're reciting, you're more likely to drift. Your mind can drift, and you can begin thinking about other things. So the internal distractions are warded off by focusing on the speech of Allah and its meaning, by pondering over that. And then the external distractions he also mentions and says they must also be severed, much like what we're focusing on now is the external distractions. And these external distractions, he mentions a couple of things. That you remove that which will busy your eyes or your ears. And the way that you can do that is by getting closer to the qibla, the wall. You get closer to pray, so that you don't have a whole view of the entire masjid and you see who's coming and going and who's playing and who's not praying. And But the closer you are, the less you're to see. And also your hearing. If you're right in the middle of things, you can hear a lot more. And if you're closer to the wall, the sound is typically, it's maybe a little bit more difficult to hear everything. As for the internal distractions, which are more difficult, like the person whose mind is running rampant in the valleys of this world, as he says, he's thinking about every little thing, and his thought, this is the crazy part about the way we think, is not fixed on one particular topic. Our mind jumps from topics in milliseconds, from here to there to all over, and we could have traveled the entire world in the first rak'ah. We could have traveled the entire world. Yep, then I went here, and I went there, and this food, and that, and there was, oh yeah, and then it's not around the world in 180 days, it's around the world in 180 seconds or less. And you're standing in prayer, and you've done all of that. And that's the way that we are challenged. And so, of course, these things are repelled. They can't be repelled by lowering your gaze. This can't be repelled by standing close to the Qibla. It can't be repelled by closing your eyes. This can only be repelled by forcing yourself, he says. He says the only way to cure this is يَرُدَّ النَّفْسِ قَهْرًا إِلَى مَا يَقْرَأ فِي الصَّلَاةِ. You have to push yourself back to what you're reading in prayer. Because the words of prayer are designed for you to be engaged with Allah, what you say, and the movements, and that's the thing. So you have the elements of the prayer, there's the physical movements, there's the words that are said, and then there's the actions that occur in the heart. So what you're trying to do is sync all of these things up together. Right? You want to do a sync here. You got the words, Allah has prescribed them for you, that if you use these words, the objective can be obtained, and that is what happens here. If you use these actions, a combination of these actions, standing, bowing, prostrating, if you use these combination of actions, they will help physically push you in the direction of submission, but the heart has to be there. And so the moment that you start getting distracted mentally, how do you bring yourself back on course? You focus on what it is that you're saying and what it is that you're doing. And that will bring your heart back to its center line. So he says, in order to prepare for that, to prepare for the prayer, entering the prayer, you have to finish what is keeping you busy. You need to conclude the task. You don't need distractions. And that's why you can't perform prayer while you have to use the restroom. Or that's why you should eat if you're hungry before you stand for prayer. Right? It's a very sensible way of worship, is get rid of the distractions so that you can focus on what is most important. And of course, you have to struggle against your own heart. You have to revive the soul by thinking of the next life. You have to think of the dangers of al-Qiyam in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the nightmares of that resurrection. He says, if your thoughts cannot be settled by this, if your thoughts cannot be settled by this, then your resolution and your objectives are nothing more than your own desires. And those desires, they have to be abandoned. They have to be severed. The desires have to be severed. He says, it's like a disease. If it takes root, nothing will cure it except for strong medicine. He says the disease, when it becomes stronger, it will engage the person in prayer. It will absorb them, if you will. And it will absorb them and engage them until they conclude the prayer from the beginning to the end. He says, think about this. This is the example of someone that goes and sits under a tree and they want to clear their mind. work, office, home, kids, bills. What do? Go out into nature where it's quiet. You find you a nice tree. You sit down under the tree. But guess what? Chirp, chirp, chirp. There's lots of little birdies flying around up there making a lot of noise. And you're getting distracted by these birds. And you've got a little stick in your hand. And so you wave them off. And just as soon as you can start to collect your thoughts and clear your mind, they come back. They come back and they begin to distract you all over. And so it's said to that person, the only way to rid yourself of this is to sever the tree. Is to cut the tree down. And the tree is the metaphor for your shahwa, your desires. Right? The desires and the various different veins, if you will, or its twigs and sticks, its branches that run through the body. You know, you can temporarily remove some of those desires just by kind of brushing them away, but the root of it's still there and it's still going to grow back. Right? So the desires, they have to be severed. Otherwise, just like the little birdies are attracted to those little limbs and twigs, you or your thoughts will be attracted to those desires. And you'll begin to think. He says just like flies are attracted to poo, right? Or filth. Like the fly, if the filth is there, the flies are going to come. And so you'll spend your entire precious life trying to repel these desires. And the root here, and this is where you have to get at. This is the severing of the tree. The root of those desires is hubb ad-dunya, love of this world, that you are attached to this life. And the only way that you're going to get rid of the limbs and the branches of your desires is if you sever that love for this life. And the only way that you can sever love for this life is by falling in love with the hereafter. Is by falling in love with the hereafter. Says that removing love of this world from the heart is extremely difficult. And ridding your heart of it entirely is aziz. It's beyond difficult. So, you have to struggle, and this is what we call jihad an-nafs. You have to struggle to the best of your ability, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that grants success and the one that aids and assists those